as far as the music, it is going to be a playlist that is on the phone, and it's going to be connected to about a 2-foot standing,
Blackstone? Blackstone speaker? Oh, speaker.
a speaker. As far as, we're expecting at least 50 to 60 people. We're thinking in about 25 to 30 cars. We are asking the numbers and tens to try to couple what they can to cut down on the traffic and the cars. I have neighbors that have offered us to park our cars on their property, which both places that there's parking lots, numerous parking spots. We are going to have 2 people directing the traffic in the parking, make sure everybody is safe and that all cars are walkable so that no accidents on wedding day.
Concern that we have is that will be alcohol being served?
Yes. And I am going to be in control of that, and if somebody's having too much, that's it. It's a ride home. I don't drink myself, so I'm the designated driver.
What, Mr. Solicitor?
Mr. President, just the only point of what I would make is just when the council is sitting as a board of licenses, as you know, recent history, you should make any vote contingent on approval if it's not submitted already in their application on approval of police, fire, zoning. My understanding, there is a form that's filed with licenses, but if they're not, then you should make it a standard part of your motion. It's subject to approval of police, fire, and zoning. So you never have to try to go back in time.
Solicitor Gazaille, is that something you could craft readily for us?
I will. I talked to the clerk. She said there is a form we can modify, but I just think if you don't acknowledge whether that form has been executed by all the appropriate parties. I mean, I know this is a different kind of license. I'm just raising it because it is a license. Oh, we don't have that form?
It's not really a license, to be honest with you.
Okay, I thought it said license.
Well, it is under that, because I didn't want to clear up towards the front, that's why. But it's really not a license.
Well, we can clarify that then. We'll work on that. I just wanted to bring that, you raised it. It's something that came up in recent history, as you know.
So, I'm sorry, you're the mother of the groom?
Yes,
Okay. Are you Gazaille? Are you Linda?
Linda Gazaille.
Okay. Linda, may I call you Linda?
Yes.
Linda, the concern over there is parking. Now, it's great that your neighbors are going to allow you to use their yards and
Yes.
parking.
Yes.
50 to 60 people, there won't be too many single people pulling up in one car. Usually you encourage them to
I
park.
don't believe so. I believe there'll be at least, the ones that have been invited, at least 2 to 4 people in each car. Like I said, we're also requesting that a lot of them, if they can, to pool, so we can cut down on the cars.
Okay. I'm not, I can't visualize if there was parking restrictions on Minden Road, one side of the road or not.
I have, as far as I know, on the right side, if you're going down Linden Road, on the side that we live on the right, I have never seen any sign saying no parking or anything.
I don't have a problem making a motion to support this, but I just want you to understand that if parking becomes a problem, the North Smithfield Police will come out for public safety and say it's time to move your cars, which could be the end of the party. Or maybe they commute somewhere and park their cars and come back with 1 or 2 cars, but.
Well, we have a plan B. One of a couple of the family members that are coming, they are going to be staying at the hotel in Woonsocket and one of the hotels, I believe, in Lincoln. And if it really gets to be a problem where it's kind of, we were going to ask if some of them could probably park their cars over there and have 1 car transfer them back.
You could probably park the cars back here, and there's municipal parking, I think, is available, but of course we would not be liable for any damages that happen to you. Just want to make sure that if the police come and ask to move the cars, that has to be done post haste, right? Okay. Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to allow music sound system between the hours of 12 noon and 9 p.m., July 3rd, 2016, at 108 Minden Road.
Second.
First by Councilman Zawinski, second by Councilman Nato. Is there any further discussion?
But we're subject to these primaries and the votes. We're just gonna,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, let it go. Okay. We don't have to fall, so. Oh, wait, let me reconsider, what do you want to add?
What Solicitor Iglesias said to add,
Subject to,
subject to, at least in this case, police and fire notification. At least, at the absolute minimum in this case, I'd like to see that added. Just so they know this is taking place and just keep an eye.
okay, amend my motion to include that.
Okay,
Thank you.
there's just one quick question that just came to me. I just hope there's no fireworks involved,
No,
Oh.
because it is the 4th of July weekend, and I
no,
don't want
there
to,
will be no fireworks.
I mean, just as a,
Hopefully by 9 o'clock, everybody will be gone and it'll be very quiet.
So, do you understand that basically we made a motion, it's going to be up to you to notify the police department and the fire department in writing that the North Smithfield Town Council has. So Deb, can you do that for us? Never mind, it's all set.
it's also on zoning as well, right?
Zoning?
We don't need to.
No, I'm not selling
I'm
this.
sorry.
No.
I'm sorry.
So just police and fire.
Police and fire. Okay, so we have a motion by Councilman Zawinski, second by Councilman Nato to approve this petition. Any further discussion? Madam Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Ms. Alice? Yes. Mrs. Nato?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan? Mr. Zalinski?
Yes.
Mr. Boucher?
Yes.
Thank you.
We wish your term long. Second request, as the council sits as the zoning board, is for the outdoor sound system permit by Jane MacDonald. Yes.
Hi, I'm Jessie MacDonald, here to request also a variance for a sound system for August 27th. We're having a wedding ceremony and reception between my sister's house and my house. We live next door to each other, at 1020 and 1024 Woodstock Hill Road. There will be a DJ. The ceremony starts at 3, and I would say we'll probably play from 5 to 11.
With this sound ordinance at 10 o'clock, it has to cease, am I correct, Madam Clerk?
We can historically, we've gone to 10.
10 o'clock.
Yeah. 11 could be a wee bit late. Have you invited all the neighbors?
Well, 6 of my neighbors are my brothers and sisters, my parents, so, yes.
So, if you invite all the neighbors, there's less pushback about sound and noise. So, I don't know. I don't think I'd voted for an 11 p.m. It's always 10.
It's always 10 o'clock to
Yeah.
conform with these, the ordinances in the community. Because, I mean, let's face it, sometimes it goes a little bit over 10, but not usually much. And the fact is that sound travels. We
I understand, yeah.
Yep. So,
10 o'clock would be fine.
10 o'clock.
Starting, what time, Jesse? What time did you want the sound program? When do you want to start with the festive music?
I would say 5 o'clock.
5 to 10?
5 to 10 sounds fine.
Okay.
May I?
So,
The ceremony starts at 3, I would just make it 3 to be on the safe side.
3 to 10?
yeah, 3 to 10.
Oh, sure.
The ceremony starting at 3,
Absolutely.
just be on the safe side.
And I think we're going to ask the same thing, Madam Clerk, if you could notify North Smithfield PD and the fire department that they're going to have this wedding at their home. And again, if there's traffic problems, just please react immediately so the police don't, get the cars off the road.
Sure.
Okay. Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to approve a sound system for August 27th, 2016 from 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. at 1024 Woonsocket Hill. And is it an abutting property too? Is it going to be both those addresses?
It
Okay.
will be, yes.
1024 Woonsocket Hill Road as well as 1020 Woonsocket Hill Road.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Zawinski, second by Councilman Sullivan to approve. Is there any further discussion? This is also, you said the correspondence with the police and fire as well?
Yes, this,
Motion?
Todd can do that for us.
All right, thank you.
We call it, or do we have to vote on it?
Hang on, we gotta vote.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Ms. Alves? Mr.
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Sullivan? Mr. Zalinski?
Yes.
Mr. Boucher?
Yes.
All right, good
Am I
luck.
released? Thank you very much.
Take us with you, will you? We need to go too.
Okay,
Clean it down.
okay, item number 8 on the document, under old business. Discussion by council to vote on action on the agreement between the Department of Interior National Park Service and the town of North Smithfield. Jennifer Smith, management of the Assistant Blackstone River Valley NHP.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the Town Council, residents of the town. My name is Jennifer Smith. I'm the Management Assistant with Blackstone River Valley National Historical Park. The National Park Service is interested in entering into a cooperative agreement with the town of North Smithfield, and I understand that I'm here tonight to, of course, answer any questions you have. I can talk to you a little bit about what cooperative agreements are, and generally just assist you in understanding the process and the tool that a cooperative agreement is and what it allows us to do in partnership. I do have copies of the draft agreement. It's a 38-page document. I think you might have them in front of you. If you need another copy, I have it. I also, just for fun and celebration, brought copies of the legislation that created the park in December of 2014. Just so if you haven't seen it, you can actually see in writing where Congress said that Slatersville was worthy of becoming part of a national park in the United States, the 402nd national park in the National Park Service system. So I do have some copies of the legislation if you'd like to have that.
I personally would like to have a copy of that.
Excellent, sure. I think I brought enough
Council
for
members as well,
everybody.
I believe.
Oh, thank you.
You have
I
copies?
do want to mention I have my colleague Megan Dupree with the Blackstone Heritage Corridor, Inc. with me here this evening in the event that there's a question asked that it's more appropriate for Megan to respond to. So if you turn the page to page 2, you'll see Slatersville listed as one of the 6 nodes, if you will, of the new national park. Again, created in December of 2014, the 402nd unit of the National Park Service. There are now, I think, 411 units of the National Park Service. The 6 nodes of the national park include Slater Mill, Blackstone River State Park, and 4 mill villages: Slatersville, Ashton in Rhode Island, Hopedale, and Whitensville in Massachusetts.
May I ask you a question of the solicitor? David, under the insurance on page 9 of 38 where it starts, Article 8, Insurance and Liability, have you had a chance to read this?
I did. May I just go back to one?
Absolutely, yeah, sure.
Just so the council's aware, and I'm certainly glad that Ms.
Jennifer
Jennifer
Smith.
Smith is here. I have this as a 5-year agreement to matching funds dollar for dollar on funds directed to this location.
That's correct.
The insurance requires that the town maintain insurance, $1 million, $3 million for liability, and protect and hold harmless the United States government and all the associated entities. I see and I heard for the first time the names of these locations, but I don't know how big these locations are. Maybe the council is very familiar with what this is, but the contract doesn't say what the locations are that are subject to this funding. And it may be attached, I assume.
Yes, absolutely, and I can if you,
And then, for those, that's the general outline of it. And the only other concern I had, and that's the legal ramifications of it, the cooperative agreement speaks for itself, is, and I mentioned this to the finance, I don't know what monies will be sought and what the expected fiscal impact will be, and a fiscal note may be appropriate. And I mentioned that to unless Ms. Smith has a good understanding of how much money is going to be sought and how much it's going to cost the town, I think that's where the council, besides liability, location, responsibility, you want to know cost. That would be my preamble.
Yeah, so for the insurance piece of it, interlocal trust will pick it up based on our budget,
Well,
percentage of
that's
our
a good
budget.
question. I didn't make that call. I probably should.
All right,
But I didn't go that next step. They will, I mean.
that's the process though, right?
Yes.
Okay.
if I may, Mr. President, through you, I can clarify some of the points of your council. A cooperative agreement is two things. Initially, it codifies our relationship. So you'll see in the beginning of this document, the MPS will, the National Park Service will, the town of North Smithfield will, and then we will together. And they're fairly general statements. They say things like, we will preserve historic resources in town, we will work to interpret the historic and recreational assets of the community jointly, those kinds of things. And a cooperative agreement, as your council has said, is a 5-year agreement, and it can just codify that relationship in that way and be done. The next layer, however, is that it does allow the two entities, the partners, the collaborators, if you will, to enter into task agreements. They are not required, however, they are possible to create underneath a master cooperative agreement. A task agreement requires a very specific project that the two entities, again, collaboratively would enter into, would have to have benefit for both sides of the relationship. And in that document, it would outline a very specific work plan related to that particular project and a very detailed budget related to that project. And again, there is a legislative required match of 1-to-1 for every project. I will tell you that it is not, doesn't have to be cash.
In kind?
It can be in kind. I'll give you a quick example, and then we can talk about the where in a second, but the what could be signage, interpretive wayfinding signage that we go out and find money for in our internal funding system to do a design and a plan and a design, and then when we go into implementation, of course, the town as the collaborator would review with us this plan and design from step 1 till it's done and accepted and vetted. And then let's just say, and I understand it is resources, but let's just say then the implementation, the installation of the signage is done by your DPW or a contractor, then that would where the 1-to-1 would come in. But again, it could be work done by your folks. That could be your match kind of thing. Certainly, and the match also in a project like that, using as an example, would be the review time of all the people on your end, your historic district commission, your planning team, you folks who are reviewing the plan and meeting with us and meeting with the contractor, all of that counts also toward the match. So that's just one example of a project.
Jennifer, the reason I brought up, it's on
Yep.
page 4 of 38, and it's number 5, and it's exactly what you said, $1 from non-federal sources for each $1 of federal funds.
Yep.
Did I miss the part that matching, in-kind services would be considered? Is it in here? Should it be in there? Because it's just talking dollars, and it doesn't say anything about in-kind, unless I missed it, and I could have missed it.
I'm not sure where it is in here. I can find out about that. My experience through...
It always has been in-kind, I know, it's not in the...
Yeah, and the town of North Smithfield has entered into cooperative agreements in the past with the National Park Service
through the Blackstone River Valley National Heritage Corridor. I was not involved with the corridor per se when all of those agreements were in place and the work being done. But there is a history of this town entering into these agreements with the National Park Service and doing some, I understand, very good work. I can find out for you, your council, where in the document it will say, you know, in kind. But it's my experience that it can be in kind and does not have to be cash or monies, if you will.
I think it was Liz McConnell.
Yes.
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 She's in Arizona, I think, or-
I think she is in the Southwest.
Yeah.
She's a longtime staff person at the Heritage Corridor. Absolutely. The where is to be determined and being worked through. Slatersville is indeed, as you can see, mentioned and explicitly listed in the park legislation. So the park is established and it includes Slatersville, and we could stop there. And you could put on all your literature, part of Blackstone River National Historical Park, and it would be awesome to say that, and probably beneficial at some level. What we need to do, and what my superintendent, and I do apologize that she could not be here tonight, Megan Kish, what we are working on right now are meeting with the 4 mill villages in the legislation and the 2 other entities, Rhode Island DEM and the Old Slater Mill Association, to enter into agreements, but also to establish a boundary for the new National Historical Park. We don't have a boundary yet. And the way we are approaching that with the mill villages and the towns is we're looking at local historic districts that are either in existence or proposed. You guys, I don't have to tell you, have several local historic districts, and there's the one in particular that we've talked to both you. We've met with your Historic District Commission already. We've certainly met with Bob and the planning staff. There was a public informational meeting that we came and met some of the town residents. We would be interested in taking the existing local historic district and having that be the boundary of the national park here in Slatersville. And so that would be the area, if approved, if put forth by the Historic Commission, that that's what you all wanted to happen. And then, depending on what your process is, obviously, I would think approval by the town council. That would be in the boundary of the new National Historical Park. And we're going through this process with, again, all of those mill villages that I mentioned and the 2 entities, Slater Mill and the state DEM. So that's the where. The where we would be interested in is the assets and resources, if you will, included in the local historic district that then we would say is within the boundary of the new National Historical Park.
If I may, Jennifer, Councilor Rouse found it's on page 9 of 38, recipient cost share or match, so
Thank you.
it's in there. I didn't see it. Thank you.
Excellent, I appreciate that work.
And, Mr. President, I have a question for Mr. Harris, who is the chair of the HTC, who is in the audience. As you know, my husband serves with you.
Yes.
And I thought I remember, and I could be wrong, I thought I remember him talking about a possible expansion of what may fall under the HDC. So would that be included in this?
There's been chatter, shall we say, about it, but nothing formal's been approached about it at this time. It's really just an in-house review of thinking about it. While it may be an attainable goal, we just really haven't gotten there yet. And the way that Jennifer kind of explained it, if we take our sort of our local historic district now, there's nothing to say that in the future we can't expand that going forward. And that really is dependent on how the town and basically the community of Slatersville reacts to wanting to expand the boundaries. It was sort of a hard push. Not so much this time, but we really have some 19 properties in Slatersville as it is now. And I'd say not even half of them are actual private property owners. They're town-owned buildings. Kendall Dean. As you know, as of right now, the Congregational Church is not part of the historic district. We would like to try to have them, they had some things that they thought that they may or may not be able to accomplish during the times that we were looking at Slatersville as a local historic district. And I think those fears have been alleviated. And we're going to engage in more communications with the church to see what they want to do as we move forward in the future. As the national park creates more of a footprint, shall we say, perhaps more of Slatersville wants to come out and be part of it. We've really had no issues with Slatersville as it is, with any of the property owners. It's going along very well, much like the same as all the other local historic districts. So it's been a great, smooth process. And I would like to see us expand the boundaries, because as the National Park Service is part of this, that creates a larger space where they can put resources more into Slatersville. You know, lots of infrastructure things that we could do to try to improve what Slatersville is today. On a point that you're making, just to step back a second, for this whole cooperative agreement, because that's what sort of we're here for, I've reviewed through this document, and honestly, I would defer to the solicitor, because as I read through this, there's a lot of boilerplate stuff in here, and it's, you know, you read through and it's in accordance with 2 CFR 200.333. I don't know what the hell that stuff is. You know, there's tons of that in here. I'm not going to take the time to go and look all that stuff up. So on those major points, I would defer to the solicitor to make sure that all this reads well. There's 38 pages, and if you add all these little other amendments and clauses and stipulations they talk about, this document could easily be a major novel.
Right.
So I'm all for the whole notion of this National Park Service making a presence here, and moving forward with that. But as far as this document itself is concerned, there's a lot of things that she mentioned in here that is very favorable for it. The other parts, I would defer to the other question I had was for Jennifer, is what kind of time frame are we looking at to have this resolved?
Thank you, Jeff, for coming up. This document right now is with our solicitors in the Northeast region of the National Park Service. We drafted that upfront language about we will, you will, we will together. The stuff in the back is boilerplate, so we just left that, and it's gone off to the Northeast region. Right now, they're processing hundreds and hundreds of cooperative agreements between towns and nonprofits and the federal government. We do expect it to come back to us and you for potential signature, I think by the end of our fiscal year, which is the end of September. 120 days from the day we sent it up, and I think the date I had was the end of April. So that's 4 months, it's probably the end of August, early September. It would come back down, and it would have been vetted through our solicitors, and we'd be ready to sign, and would hope that you would be as well. If you wouldn't mind, Mr. President, my colleague Megan Dupree has asked if she could come up and maybe say a few words just to clarify a couple of things.
Sure, absolutely. Yes.
Thank you so much. Many of you know me, I know many of you. I'm Megan Dupree. I'm the Deputy Director of the Blackstone River Valley National Heritage Corridor. I started working with the corridor, which is the nonprofit partner of the Park Service, about 4 years ago, and worked with the council on establishing a cooperative agreement. Back in those days, I've been around the valley for a long time, at any rate. The cooperative agreement, I just wanted to clarify outside of the federal speak, is sort of the agreement that we may want to do projects together in the future. So it
by plan, by design, lacks specificity about what project, where, for how much money, and how the match requirements in item G, I think it is on page 9, would be satisfied by the community and the community's partners. Jen mentioned a task agreement. That would follow as a project comes to mind, and it's sort of a project management plan or a contract to do a specific project. Many of the communities that we work with, and we ourselves have a cooperative agreement with the Park Service, much of the match that we're able to provide and that we encourage communities to provide is through volunteer cleanup time, for example. If there were an interpretive sign that would be placed, perhaps volunteers go into an area, clean up the area, trim vegetation, and prepare it for installation, to have a new historical information sign placed there. So all of that is the kind of thing that gets fleshed out in what's called in federal speak a task agreement. I call it a contract. It's a project agreement that has those level of details. The cooperative agreement I typically described as we agree to play nice together and communicate down the way. In addition to the historic district in Slatersville proper, the Park Service is also available, depending on staffing and time, to offer technical assistance throughout the Blackstone River Valley National Heritage Corridor, all 25 municipalities, even outside of specific historic districts or park nodes. So there are opportunities where having a park ranger assist with a specific task or having some research provided or a presence for a particular event might be part of the discussion down the line. So the cooperative agreement was established, and again, it's been renewed periodically over the years, so that you sort of realize that there's this set of relationships for a period of time, and then during that period of time can get into specific projects. So, sorry about that.
It's okay. We have a gentleman who's doing a movie, who's been working on a movie for several years. Christian DeResendes, about the history of Slatersville.
Yes, I think the corridor helped provided a grant to him a couple of years ago.
Right, and it's, like I said, it's, I guess he's moving forward to completion.
I saw he got some funding recently.
Yes.
From the digital agency.
And it was highlighted at the public event
Yes.
that you guys put on at Scarvis Hall.
That's correct, yeah. Megan and I, the superintendent and I, talk to Christian quite frequently. It's a wonderful project. It's a wonderful project.
I'd just like to add something to what Megan was talking about. She mentioned historical markers. Now, what happened this is just very recently, and this I'm just explaining as a good faith effort of what the National Park Service is doing for us at this time. They have some extra monies to end their fiscal year, and they contacted us to say, we have some extra monies, and if you have something that you have an idea of something you want to do, I'll be honest, I was very pressed for time to say, I don't know what we're going to do. So I brought it up to the commission, and Elizabeth Martin, one of our great commission members, came up with the idea of putting out some nice markers that we're going to have. We're hoping to come through with, for some of the great buildings that we have right here, the two stone buildings, the Slatersville Mill, and several of the buildings in Slatersville. It'd be a nice either stone marker. The design hasn't been come out yet, but the whole idea of the whole thing is we're going to have some kind of informational historic marker, so it will increase your awareness as you move through and experience Slatersville. You have these places, these little nodes within Slatersville that you'll be able to stop by. And Megan and Jennifer have been involved pretty much with, not so much with the Stamina Mills project, but the Stamina Mills project that we've been talking about, what to do with that site. There's been a lot of talk about that site. We just recently had lots of meetings about that, and how we're trying to introduce Forestdale and that site as a gateway into Slatersville. So we're talking about expanding the district. We don't necessarily have to say, it's this 19 properties, but it's really North Smithfield as a whole and how it expands out. And that's what we're really looking at. we're looking at how Forestdale connects. There's a big conversation of all the different mill villages within town. So, not to go on with a history lesson or anything like that, but that's sort of the front that we're really approaching on, and how National Park Service is leading the way and trying to help us get some of these things that we're trying to do to make Slatersville better.
Another question, like, Jennifer, or Megan, on page 11 of 38, article reports and/or deliverables, who's going to be doing the reporting? I mean, is this something, a task that can be set up later on? A town employee, a town official, or a board member, or does Blackstone, I mean, who's going to do this?
This would be on your end, and it would be something that we would codify in that task agreement, in that
Okay.
project agreement. For instance, with the Blackstone Heritage Corridor, I believe Charlene, the executive director, does most of the reporting. I'm sure she taps into you and other staff members to get some of the information.
Like
material.
most federal funding programs, there's usually a requirement for a quarterly report. What you said you were going to do and how you're tracking on it.
Okay.
Pretty routine, it's the same SF 424 and 425 that's used for most federal projects.
Okay. Thank you.
And to just respond a little bit to what Jeff said, thank you for your kind words about working with us. We feel the same. You might ask, well, why can't we just do it that way? And wait for their phone call and say, well, what do you want to do? We've got a little end of year money. What we're working on right now is, again, our fiscal year ends at the end of September. We budgeted, we just went through your budget exercise, and we budgeted last October 1, and maybe some hirings didn't happen as we thought, or a project didn't cost as much as we thought it was, or to maintain this piece didn't cost as much, and so we're finding ourselves with a tiny, tiny pot of some end-of-year funding that we decided we would go out to our partners in these communities and in the state park and at Slater Mill and say, hey, so, staying under the micro purchase level, which again, I assume you all understand as municipal folks, what can we do? What's the best impact that we can do for, quite frankly, a couple $1,000s? Without having a task agreement in place, without going through contracting, what's something that we can agree on will benefit Slatersville and increase the visitor experience here for low dollars. What we're talking about through a cooperative agreement and tax agreement is more than that. I've seen very large task agreements with entities, but I mean, it's much more than the micro purchase level, like, $5,000, $10,000, $20,000, again, depending on the project and the scope and scale of the project, and of course the output of the project. So it just allows us to do bigger things together and seek bigger funding.
Do you have like an overall, I like to call it a wish list?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, Bob,
Of
because
what?
one thing I want to get to, and I'll use this as an opportunity to sort of advertise, and I know that most of you have probably already seen that June 11th, we're going to be hosting a town charrette, as we call it, and we're seeking ideas for what we're going to do with Slatersville as part of the national park. How we see this moving forward, how we see it expanding, what kinds of things can we do, what kind of things can we ask for, where are we going to put our monies to? All these questions need to be answered, and we would like to get the community's input on all of these types of things. So what we decided to do was to try to bring together as many in the community as possible to talk about these things and have an open discussion and review. And then we'll put that all together in a nice format to present to the National Park Service so that they have an idea of what we're looking for. And then when we say, hey, we can start to get to this number one on our priority list, if we do develop it into priorities, we'll start to lean on the National Park Service and say, well, how can we work towards this together to make this happen?
I hope at that meeting you have Louise Van Houten there, because she has, the institutional knowledge.
She can walk right down the street.
So, I guess overall, it's this has to be reviewed by our solicitor, this document. And we're gonna have to get some fiscal impact from our finance director.
I would think, Mr. President, this is the point, I think maybe you want to get a recommendation of what the location will be for the historic. And I know we've been talking about, it could be little, we ultimately need to identify the location.
We do, yeah, and it's like two paths happening at the same time. Again, we have met several times with the Historic District Commission. We should probably ramp up that discussion and start really digging in about what the local historic district looks like, and therefore what the boundary of the national park looks like in Slatersville. I guess I'd like to just conclude with, I think it's a good idea to strongly consider getting this cooperative agreement into place. It's one of the pieces. It's one of the pieces, and it is a tool that allows for us to do other things. And the other pieces, like what the boundary is and what those projects are, will then fall into place. And this is just one of those first steps. And I would be happy to come back your early September meeting. I know Megan would be happy to also come back. I can probably get the superintendent to come with me that evening. Again, I do apologize, she just had a conflict this evening, but this is very, very important to the park and the park management and park staff.
It's important to our town as well.
Well, I mean, absolutely, I mean, it's the historical significance, it's the first planned mill village in the history of the United States. And so the idea is that, we'd like everybody to know that, a small little town, everybody talks about Pawtucket and Slater over there. Well, we had his, it's about Samuel Slater, but here, we had his brother John, and the significant impact that he made in the Industrial Revolution as well.
And Congress said the assets and resources that are here in Slatersville are nowhere else in this country and shouldn't be celebrated anywhere else in this country, that this is where it is. So, yeah, thank you.
So Jennifer, you said
Yes.
you would come back in September. Why so long?
I'll come back whenever you want me to.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, as soon as we get the...
I didn't know if you met during the summer or if you had other stuff. It sounds like you got a lot of budget to get through.
Yeah, we're here. Twice a month we're here, Jennifer.
Yeah.
Sometimes more.
Yeah, again, it's in our court up in the region, spinning around with a bunch of other agreements. I'm hopeful by then it will have been vetted through our folks on our side, and then I can come in and say, well, we're ready to go. How about you guys? So I think the timing would line up.
Right, well, that approved document on your side, we would want our legal,
Of course,
and
It won't
then we would decide.
absolutely. There'll be much more back and forth. That's part of the deal, for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us this evening. Appreciate it.